The Lost Kings, Part 4. He knew where she'd gone, had known it from the moment the dragon had said, "She can climb no higher," but that didn't make it any easier to find her on the spire. "Why here?" the dragon asked, banking in a tight turn as he examined the steep upthrust of rock that adorned the city's center. "It was our refuge," Valan replied, "a place where the other children wouldn't follow and the adults couldn't." He eyed the towering rock spike, noting the adult-sized figures working their way along the stone ledges toward the top. "Until now," the dragon concluded, abruptly changing direction, "the White Mountains grew up in terrain far more difficult than that." "Is that why it calls us, do you think?" Valen asked. "Because it's the closest thing to our homeland in the city?" "You, perhaps," the dragon answered, back winging and changing direction. "Hang on, they have noticed our presence." "You're a bit hard to miss." The thought was out before Valen could stop it. The dragon tilted, angling himself so Valen had a better view of the spike. "If I didn't know any better, I'd say you just called me fat." Valen blushed. "I'm just saying you're big." He stopped, letting the words trail off when he realized there was nothing he could say to make it better. "There she is," the dragon said, directing his mind to where he needed to look. Valen's gaze followed, and his body reacted before his mind could stop it. He rose from his seat, gripping the spine in front of him for balance. "Shit!" The dragon's command rolled through his head. "You'll need to be stable if you're going to make the grab." Valen didn't need to ask what grab. He could see his sister standing, balanced in the branches of the tallest tree at the top of the spike. She was watching the edges of the small plateau and occasionally glancing down to make sure none of her pursuers were climbing up. Valen's breath caught as one of the white mountains hauled themselves over the plateau's edge and stalked forward. Valen didn't catch what he shouted as he stood eyeing his sister in the tree, but her reply was instantaneous. She dropped to one of the lower branches and walked toward the end. The elf was not pleased. He spat something into the wind and bolted forward. Drea grinned, danced the last few steps to the branch's tip, and threw herself into the air. The dragon rumbled an oath and dived. Valen had no choice but to wrap his arms around the spine in front. "How in all the 800 hells am I supposed to catch her?" he wondered. "I will catch her," the dragon told him. "You need to hold on." He flipped himself into a roll that forced Valen to cling with both legs and arms to prevent being thrown off. "Don't let go," the dragon instructed. Valen wanted to answer the absurdity of that order, but the blood rushed to his head as the dragon rolled under his sister's plummeting form. Valen's legs threatened to lose their grip, but it was all he could do to get them to retain their grip on the dragon's scaly hide. The idea of using his daggers to retain his position lost its appeal when he realized he'd have to let go in order to draw them. Pulling himself close to the dragon's spine, he hung on for dear life. "If I get out of this alive," he thought fiercely. "Hold tight," the dragon instructed, its mental voice strained. Again, Valen didn't dignify that with a reply. He squeezed his eyes tight shut, pressing his cheek against the dragon's spine and praying he could do exactly that. The gods only knew what his sister would do if he fell just when she was rescued, and not just to the dragon. He felt the great beast shift and dug in harder with his knees and heels. The dragon didn't utter a word of complaint. It felt like an eternity as the dragon glided upside down over the city center, timing his drop so he came beneath the falling girl in time for her to slam against his chest. "Grip," the dragon ordered, and before Valen had time to wonder why it would give him such a useless instruction, it flipped upright again. Without the warning, Valen might have lost his grip and been flung from the dragon's back, and he didn't let go, even when he was upright once more. A faint, frustrated keening came to him on the wind. It sounded like cursing, but he couldn't be sure. "My sister?" he asked. "Has a very good grip on the common vernacular of sailors, street rats, and soldiers, and a very solid knowledge of the more vulgar side of Elvish," the dragon replied. "It's most unbecoming for a princess." Valen couldn't tell whether Brel was amused or annoyed. "I truly hope she doesn't intend to try and carry out her threats," the dragon told him. "I do not see myself as stakes of any kind, or corroborating with succubi on that level." Valen flushed. The orphanage hires us out to any who'll pay, he said. Dorea's last assignment was at the docks, and before that she worked in the barracks of one of the local mercenary companies. She said if she cussed them out, the mercs and sailors were more likely to listen to what she had to say. And they gave her weapons lessons because, Belle prodded, because she wouldn't take no for an answer, Valan tried. Now that I can believe, the dragon answered. He brought his wings down in a single powerful sweep, and the staccato keening became a wail. Now she thinks I'm going to eat her, the dragon said in disgust. You wait until she sees you in human form, Valan warned him. Why? All I can say is I hope you wear some kind of protection, Valan said, because she kicks like a mule. I have people waiting, the dragon replied. Perhaps they, or you, can speak to her before I release her from my claws. Your claws? Valen's mental pitch rose in alarm. I am being very careful, the dragon assured him. There was nothing to say to that, and nothing he could do to set things right, so Valen changed the subject. They'll leave now, won't they? He asked. The Oshalans and the White Mountains? I'll see to it, the dragon replied grimly. They swept over the city walls and out over the bay. Brel dropped close to the waves. The wail became a shriek of anger, and Valen was sure he heard a splash. What did you do? He asked. I thought she needed to cool off. You just wanted to see what she's like when she's really mad. I am not that foolish, truly. That's not what it sounded like to Valen. In fact, if he didn't know any better, he'd have said the dragon was finding it funny. We're in the middle of a war zone here, he grumbled. The least you could do would be to act like that mattered. Really? The dragon asked. Because I don't see an army out here. Valen looked around, a chill flowing through him when he found what he was looking for. I bet you wondered how the Asholans reached us without the alarm being raised in the mountains. It had crossed my mind, Bell responded. They have a navy? Where the dragon's reply ended in a series of curses, and he flicked himself abruptly up. The scream of a cannonball passing beneath them elicited another squawk from the dragon's claws. It was followed by a flare of scarlet lightning that leapt back along the cannonball's trail and set the ship's sails alight. The dragon chuckled and winged higher, banking away from the half-dozen ships heading toward the city. That is something to have them wondering, he said. Now there will be talk of a dragon with a wizard's magic. But will they leave the city? Phelan wanted to know, now that Dorea and I are no longer there. That depends on human greed, the dragon conceded. Your city's masters have not yet come to the city's defense. It is yet to be seen as to whether they will. Valen glanced back at the ships. Two had lost sail to aid their stricken fleetmate, but the other three continued toward the docks. The dragon ground out several words and abruptly gained height. Valen was glad he hadn't relinquished his grip on the spine in front. It was all that kept him from sliding from the dragon's shoulders as it surged starward. He dug in his heels and gripped with his thighs, and that was all that stopped him from falling as the dragon threw itself into a backward loop. Another bolt of lightning tore into the sky, and the dragon roared. We let them live! The dragon roared, its angry bellow deafening as its shout rocked Valen's head. I don't know why you're shouting at me, Valen protested. Because she won't hear me, the dragon gritted back. She won't? I do not know who taught her or why they thought she needed to know it, but she has the know-how and the power to block a dragon's mental link. Valen bit back a laugh at how offended he sounded. It's not funny. I can't tell her who I am or why I'm here or what my intentions are, and you are well aware that she can be difficult at the best of times. Valen was, but how do you know that? While it took me some time to learn why the White Mountains had sent spies to my city, I put a watch on you as soon as I did. How long ago did you know they intended to invade? 2 days, the dragon replied shortly, and that only because we found the Ashalan vanguard. You didn't send spies to see who'd sent the White Mountains? We sent them, the dragon replied gravely. They have not returned. He flew high enough the air grew chill. We're out of their sight, the dragon told him. I apologize for the cold, but I must reach our destination undetected, and they cannot know which way we flew. Cold, Valen replied, his teeth chattering. He pressed his face to the dragon's spine and closed his eyes as the cold bit deeper. Maybe ice would form and hold him in place when he lost consciousness. It won't come to that, the dragon informed him. Sure, Valen thought sleepily. At least Dorea won't cause you any more trouble. You'd be surprised. The dragon's reply arrived as the darkness threatened to overwhelm him. Before it did, the dragon folded its wings and dropped. Are you hurt? Valen asked. Busy. Not helpful, Valen thought. But if the dragon caught that thought, he didn't reply. Instead, he flared his wings, abruptly ending his drop, his claws rattling on stone as his hind quarters settled and he furled his wings. Hold on a little longer, it ordered, setting one forepaw on the ground and moving awkwardly out of the late afternoon sun. It was hard, for while they were out of the icy upper sky, the chill there had settled bone deep and still clung. Valen's teeth chattered, and he felt too tired to raise his head and look around. He tried, but his eyes kept drifting closed. He was aware of stone walls enclosing them, and the air growing slightly warmer, and darkness. It was almost comforting, less like being buried and more like entering the tunnels and finding sanctuary, Valan thought as the dragon shifted. The abrupt fall and sudden landing drove all thoughts of sanctuary from Valen's mind, as did his sister's cry. Valan! How she wasn't frozen to the bone he didn't know, but his own movements were sluggish as he scrambled away from the sudden appearance and approach. Stupid boy, she scolded, reaching down and grabbing him by the arm. At least let me help you up. Seeing there was no stopping her, Valan complied, looking for the dragon as he did so. He didn't have to look very far. The creature had shifted to human form and the Northman was watching them, head cocked to one side and a small smile playing over his lips. Dorea glanced over her shoulder. You two know each other? She demanded, following his gaze. He rescued me, Valan answered, just as the dragon said, passingly well. Rescued you? Dorea asked. From what? A white mountain Ashalan patrol, the dragon answered for him. It returned its attention to Dorea. And my name is Brel. I'll bet it's not, Dorea retorted, following that with briefly spoken words that sent a shimmer of warm yellow light rolling down her arms. The dragon flushed. It is the shortened form of my name, and I give the full form to no one.